What's up, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more classical music, and indeed, it doesn't get more classical than this. As I mentioned in my, I think, a couple classical reactions now, when I was in college as an undergrad, I took 2 history of Western classical music courses. So it was less about, learning notation and different things, and it was more just about the context and the history of how what we now call classical music in so-called the West, which, that's a problematic term as a historian, I would say, but nevertheless, how the music that we now call classical music came to exist. And they were really great classes that, right at the time when I was really exploring classical music as an adult on my own rather than just hearing it when I was younger, because my dad used to listen to it a lot. I took these courses which just sort of really gave me an appreciation and a further love of classical music, including over the centuries. So we're going to listen to a tune which is just amazing for so many reasons. Number one, it's the oldest surviving complete musical composition. It is very short, and there are a couple musical fragments that are actually older, but this is dated to either the 1st or the 2nd century, CE or AD if you prefer. And it's ultimately a tune from what was then Hellenistic Ionic Greece, but which is now part of Turkey, and it was found inscribed on a gravestone, or I think it's called a stela or stele, I'm not sure. That part of history and archaeology are not my expertise, but it's essentially an inscription that was written by a widower to his deceased wife. And it's amazing. Number one, the music of this piece. It has this sort of minor key sort of sound. The way it's notated is not the modern form of notation. It's an ancient Greek musical notation, which I do think is now understood and so on. Though I think when I was learning about this, I remember being taught that they're not exactly sure. They can give some representation of how it may sounded, but because they didn't use treble or bass clefs or the same exact type of notation, the sound may have varied from the way it is now performed to some degree. I don't know if that's it's better placed in exactly sort of the sonic range that it should be, but that's the way I learned it over 20 years ago now, or at least right around 20 years ago. So anyway, the transcription or the translation of the short inscription, I've seen it done various ways. The way I sort of think of it is, while you live, shine, let nothing grieve you, because life is short and time will demand its toll. Which, I don't know, the simplicity but also the profundity of that really strikes me. It did when I first heard about this, it did when I was listening to it and I was thinking about, this is a piece that is essentially 2,000 years old, and it was written as a tribute to his wife, and we talk about it today. Think of the achievement of paying tribute to your wife, where 2,000 years later, people are talking about your music, people are talking about, what you, or, maybe someone that you knew, wrote as a memorial to your deceased partner. It's amazing. And again, that sentiment that hey, life can be tough and maybe sometimes we face things or, real pain, but you gotta try as much as possible not to let it grieve you, not to let it get to you, because we're only in the sun, so to speak, for a very short time, and ultimately, time will demand its toll. The reaper will come for us all. So while we're here, try to find happiness, try to find fulfillment, try to find a passion, something that makes you excited, like the way that, for me, talking about music very much does. Because, you're not going to be here forever. And, when the end comes, hopefully you will have made as much of your time as you've wanted to. So yeah, I think this is an amazing piece for that sentiment of the inscription. I think the music that was chosen, again, I don't know if the husband was directly involved in its composition, but, and again, it's, the details of exactly who this was or so on, we don't really know. It's called the Epitaph of Seikilos, or Seikilos. It's Seikilos, Seikilos, I think. Nevertheless, so we don't know exactly the sort of historical context of this person, but the sentiment, the music, and to me the historical context make it so significant and wonderful. So with all that set up, it is a very short piece. This will be about 45 seconds long or so, but I hope you enjoy. So here we go. Again, very short, I think very powerful, and maybe it's partly because I can't get the historical context out of my head, but it really hits me like every time I've listened to that. I remember when because it was the beginning of the first Western musical history class. You know, this was like, if it wasn't the first day, it was certainly the second day, and we didn't listen. This is from a collection, by the way, called the Norton collection of like Western classical music, and it exists. There's like multiple 2 CD volumes, and I think for the classes that I took, we listened to the first 2 volumes, which went through the earliest music up through sort of the Middle Ages, and, you know, sort of French motets and what's his name, Josquin and other people, and then on up to the sort of late Middle Ages and into the early modern period and so on, right up until the contemporary. You know, the last part of the second class, you know, we were talking about people like Gershwin and even John Williams and so on. So it was really an amazing class. I'm so glad I took it. Again, 2 parts, 2 semesters. But this may have stuck out to me as much as anything over the 2 semesters, and it was, you know, right up front. I remember feeling emotional in the class, and again, now that I think about it, you know, much later when we were talking about Bach, one of the a lot of the students in the class were music majors, and they had to take this for their major. For me, it was an elective. But a lot of them, you know, played instruments and were, you know, doing actual performance. So there was a woman in the class who was training to perform Bach's cello suite, and she played the prelude in our class. Made me weep. I'm like, I'm almost there right now because I'm thinking about it. But yeah, basically, it was really powerful. So, and you know, Yo-Yo Ma's performance of that piece is just unbelievable. So, I'm now going to put that on the list. One of the things I will react to at some point is Yo-Yo Ma's performance of Bach's cello suite, in particular the prelude. I mean, obviously, that's where you would start. Yeah, so hopefully some of you are here for it. Hopefully some of you enjoyed this. You know, I didn't know about it until I took that class, but it's something that stuck with me over time. Not just the music, but that sentiment expressed by the inscription. So again, shout out to the husband of Seikilos, or maybe he was Seikilos, I'm not sure. Nevertheless, I think that's a really powerful piece, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Anyway, have a good day, have a good night. See you next time. Peace.